Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to this week's REI Weekly lesson. I'm your host, Greg Hellbeck, and today we're actually going to do a screen share on today's REI Weekly lesson, and it's going to be about how do you run comparables on a property. I am going to use a screen share here, so if you are watching this on YouTube, you are in the right place. If you're listening to this on a podcast, you're still going to be able to get value from this on an audio because I'm going to do my best to be as detailed as possible so you can still understand what I'm talking about. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, but I recommend you also afterwards check out the YouTube video so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. If you're not familiar with me, I have been a full-time real estate investor now for 10 years. I've done well over 350 properties. I've invested in some tough markets, New York, Seattle, San Diego. I got a lot of experience, and running comparables and evaluating properties is very, very important. You need to understand this. And especially in changing markets, like we're in right now, you got to understand what to look for and how do you really assign a certain value to a property. So I'm going to actually use redfin.com today. So let's get into it right now. I'm actually going to use an old property that I ended up wholesaling last year. I'm going to use that address because that's a good example in terms of running comparables based on the fact that it's a normal house in a normal neighborhood and it's easy to pull comps. So I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. So first things first, I'm going to redfin.com. By the way, another thing I hear people say is that they're like, oh my God, I don't have the MLS. How am I ever going to run comparables? Well, I'll tell you what, the only MLS that I have is the MLS in New York. Then I invest in 2 other places and we make money in those 2 other places as well as New York. So the answer to your question is you don't need the MLS. If you have Redfin, Zillow, Realtor.com, Trulia, that is all you need, right? The MLS is great because you can get really into the weeds with data, but Redfin nowadays and Zillow is fantastic. You can see all the active properties, all the pending properties, most of the sold properties, and it's awesome. So let's get into it. So first things first, I'm typing in an address, 5 Doyle Drive, and this is in Wappingers Falls, New York. So first thing you want to do when you run comps is you want to type in your subject property that you're trying to come up with a value for. So I typed in the address as the first step. And another thing I'm going to recommend you do here is you have multiple tabs going on your computer, whether you have 2 monitors or, multiple tabs on Google Chrome or Safari. You want to have multiple tabs up because you want to have one tab with the subject property. You want to have another tab up with the active properties that are for sale, another tab up with the pending properties, and then another tab up with the sold properties. So I'm actually going to create 3 tabs here so we can look at this. Actually, we have 4 tabs. We have the subject property. We got a tab open to look at active properties, pending properties, and then a tab open to look at sold properties. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at active properties. The zip code here is 12590. So actually, before I get into that, the first thing that you could do on Redfin, which is really cool, is you can do like a quick analysis of sold comparables. So you literally just scroll down here, about a quarter way down. You can click here where it says recently sold homes. And then it's going to pull up a map, which is cool. So you can see here right below that, and then it has above the map all the properties that are on the map, right? So in this case, we have properties C, B, E, A, and D. So in this case, these properties are about probably a quarter mile away, so they're still good comps. So first of all, let's just check that out for low-hanging fruit. So let's look at property D. And first of all, our property here is a 3-bed, 1-bath, 1,800 square foot house. So we're going to be looking for 3-bed, 1-bath, maybe 2-bath, depending on, how we want to comp it, 15 to 2,000 square foot houses to run our comps. And it's a ranch style house. I can just tell by looking at it. Now, first thing we're going to do is look at comp D. So here's a 3-bed, 2-bath house that is 1,800 square feet. So this is similar to ours. This property on 46 Scott Drive most likely wasn't renovated. And I will tell you this, in New York, you can't usually see the pictures on the sold properties on Redfin. You have to have the MLS for that. Now, other states, like in Delaware, you can use Redfin and it will show you the old pictures from the MLS for when it closed. So that's a little bit nuanced to specific markets. Same thing with Washington, you can see it as well. So anyway, this property on 46 Scott Drive, 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,800 square feet, sold for $440. Okay, so that's pretty good. Our property could be worth $440. We got to see what's going on. That's a good data point. Let's look at the second one, E. $450, 3-bed, 1.5-bath, 1,800 square foot, $450. So now we got a $440 comparable. We got a $450 comparable. So that's pretty good. So I'm thinking this property right off the bat probably worth, $440 to $450. Comparable number B, 3-bed, 1.5-bath, 1,600 square feet, sold for $525. Now that's freaking crazy. Most likely this was a renovated property. I can assume that because, I'm just looking at the outside. The side, it looks good. Everything looks good here. It looks like it's got landscape. So I'm assuming this was a flipper who did this project. And then we look at comp A, 3-bed, 1.5-bath, $467. So Comps are anywhere from 450 to 525, which, by the way, Dutchess County, New York is absolutely smoking hot. That makes complete sense. I know the market. And then there's another comp here, 3-bed, 1.5 bath, sold for 375. So that one probably is super outdated. If it's dated, grandma special, probably looking at 350, 375. If it's renovated, we're looking in between 450 and 525. Obviously, there's a huge gap there, and that could literally be your profit. So you need to understand in that situation, what is the condition of your property? How much work does it need, to be put into it in order to have it be worth, that number you're looking on the comps. And this is just, like I said, these are just sold properties around the area. So that's a good indicator. Now, in a changing market, you're going to want to have more data on the pendings and the actives, because when you're buying a property to renovate and resell, whether you're flipping it or you're wholesaling it to someone who's going to flip it, you need to understand, what is the current status of that market? How much inventory is around there? What inventory is already pending? How long did it take to go pending? What inventory is still for sale? How come it's still for sale? Why didn't it go pending? Is it priced wrong? So that's what we're going to do on the second part here. So we're going to take the zip code here of 12590, and this is in Wappingers Falls. We're going to type it into Redfin. All right, so now we're going to go for sale. We're going to click active pending only. So you're going to click under there. You're going to go here. You're going to go to home type house. Right? So you just houses that are pending in the zip code. And now obviously we're going to go neighborhood specific. So you go to the first tab you have open, which is the subject property. Click on the Google map over here. And if you're listening to this, I'm literally just going back to my subject property specific page on Redfin. And in the bottom right part of the top of the page, I'm clicking on this little map next to where it says thinking of selling. And then I'm seeing exactly where is my property. So, and I'm going to look at all the pending properties in that neighborhood. So this property is basically at the top of Old Hopewell Road and All Angles Hill Road. So I'm going to go on the map now. I'm going to look for that road. So it looks like it's really southeast Wappingers Falls. So I'm going to go to downtown Wappingers Falls and southeast. So it's in this neighborhood over here. So you see we're at the corner of Old Hopewell and All Angles. There's this neighborhood in here. This is where the property is. It's in this little subdivision. And right now in this subdivision, I'm just looking right off the bat, this $1.1 million comp is not a comp because it is in a different subdivision and it's obviously a mansion. So that's not going to be comparable. So the only thing that's pending in our neighborhood right now is a property on Scott Drive that's 4 beds, 2.5 baths, 2,300 square feet. So this property pending is about 500 square foot bigger than our property. So this is bigger than our property in terms of the size. However, this property that's pending is not renovated, right? It's as is. It looks like, if you're looking through the pictures here, this is a grandma special, super old kitchen. Paint color is horrendous. I mean, this thing's got shag carpet, bathrooms old. This is a dated special. This thing, if you're going to upgrade this property to a fully remodeled home, you're looking at, with that size square footage, if you're doing a full rehab, 75 to 80 grand minimum. So this is pending at 475 as is, right? So this is telling me, if this property was renovated and it was on the market and it's the same exact house, just updated, I would assume if we're putting 70 grand into this thing, it's going to be worth about 545 to 550 renovated, this property, right? Now ours is obviously smaller, right? It's a smaller house. It only has 1 bathroom. I'm looking here. So that's something we got to factor in. So this is the only pending property in the neighborhood. So that's just telling me that if our subject property was bigger, we would assume about a 550 ARV. And now I'm going to go now and I'm going to do the same exact thing. Actually, you don't even need another tab here. If you don't want, you can just, I'm going to click one of these tabs out. You could just take the same map you have pulled up here that's pending properties in the neighborhood, and you can actually just go to active only. And now we're looking at properties that are active. Now in this neighborhood, there's no active properties for sale, which is a good thing, right? That means that there's not a lot of stuff available. There's 1 property that's pending. So that generally means in a hot market, if something goes for sale, it goes pending quickly and it sells quickly. So the next thing we're going to do, really the last thing, and I'll wrap this video up, is that we're going to look at solds again. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to toggle. I'm on the top left part of the page. I'm going to go down to sold. So I'm going back 3 months and I'm going to look at some properties that sold. So there's one here, 3-bed, 1-bath property sold for $375. I could tell the roof's banged up. I could tell this thing's dated. This is probably an as-is situation where it's, grandma special, kind of like the one that we saw that was pending for $445, but this one's smaller, 3-bed, 1.5 bath. And then there's another one here, 3-bed, 1-bath, sold for $495. Now this was probably in good shape. So I'm generally looking at these comps and I'm going to determine my property, 5 Doyle Drive. And by the way, I did do this deal. I wholesaled it in 2024. So the market has actually gone up a little bit since then. to give you the spoiler alert, the property 5 Doyle Drive ended up selling for $445. And, it sold basically right around what the other one sold for. If we look at the comps here, we have another one here, like $495. But this one sold recently. This thing sold in March of 2025, so 2 months ago. So the market's gone up a little bit since then. And this one has an extra half bath. Yeah, that's pretty much all we got in terms of comps. If we at 3 months out, if we want to go 6 months out, we can go there. And then another thing you want to do, there's a lot of inventory here. We want to trim this out. So we want to go maybe just 3-bed properties. So you toggle up here 3-bed only. And then, 1+ bathrooms. So now we can just drill a little bit deeper. So there's a comp up the street that sold $467. And then there's another one here, $460, that sold $3.2. So basically this property, if you're looking at sold data, selling anywhere from $440 to $470. So that's the general ARV range. So, if I'm flipping this property, which I wholesale, I had the ARV pegged at about $425 back when I wholesaled it. So that's generally how you run comps. I know this was a lot more of a technical video, but to summarize this and keep it under 20 minutes is you want to look at your subject property, first of all, look at the beds, baths. And if your county's all screwed up, you can always go to the tax record to get that, because sometimes Redfin and the tax record's different, or Zillow, whatever. You want to look at the property. You want to do a quick Redfin page, just kind of sold comparables on the map. Then you want to open up another tab and you want to look and you want to toggle for sale, active, pending only. And you want to see in your neighborhood what properties are pending that are similar to yours. And sometimes you can't go as into the weeds with the bedrooms and bathrooms. So you want to see pending stuff, because that pending tells you what's currently happening. Active tells you what's happening in the future in terms of what they probably will sell for, because it's still for sale. And then sold comps tell you, so assuming you're not going too far back, what happened in the past. So you get a past picture of value, present picture of value, future picture of value. And that's how you come up with ARVs on properties, or just as is values. But the key here is you got to understand your specific property. What is the condition of your property? And if you're looking at pending properties or you're looking at active properties, at least in New York, you can see the pictures on the listing. So you can compare the condition of your property to the current properties that are for sale or currently being sold pending. One more thing you want to look at is when you're looking at properties that are pending or sold, you want to see how long did they take to go pending, and then how long did they take to sell. So for example, this property here that's pending at $475 on Scott Drive, it looks like they listed the property in March of 2025, so 2 months ago, for $475, and literally 10 days later they went pending. And in New York, that's quick because you have to get attorneys involved. So this thing basically went pending instantly. There's probably multiple offers. It's probably pending more than $475. I'm assuming it's probably pending at $485, $490. So this is a good sign. This is telling me that this inventory or this piece of real estate that got listed was priced well and it had enough demand to go pending right away. It got listed for $475 in April, and then 3 weeks later it got pending. So basically it took an offer within 3 weeks. Most likely it's at $475, if not higher. There's probably multiple offers. So basically this thing moved quickly and it's probably going to close quickly. I'm assuming it's, it went pending on April 20th, probably going to close in the next 2 or 3 weeks. So that's the thing you want to look at with pendings. You want to see how long did it take to go pending. And then in terms of sold comps, just to show you that trick real quick, you go to sold here, 6 months, and then, let's just look at a random one here that's sold for, well, actually, I'll show you mine. Let's look at mine, right? So this property, 5 Doyle, it got listed in December for $450, okay? So it went pending about 6 weeks later, and then it sold about 2 months later, and that's typical in New York. It takes about 2 months to sell property. So this thing ended up selling fairly quickly considering the holidays and whatnot. So that's how you do comps. That's how you analyze stuff. Hopefully you got value from this video. I think this was the first time I ever did like a screen share. So if you got value from this, let me know. If you're in the Hudson Valley, like around here, or you're in Seattle, or you're in Delaware, you have a house you want to wholesale to me or wholesale with me, send me an email, greg@velocityhousebuyers.com, or you can send me a DM on Instagram at grego37, and I'll see you on the next REI Weekly lesson.